Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am here today with Mistress Leora, and I am super excited to be having a conversation of our own unique, different styles of financial domination. I am Mistress Danielle Blunt, a professional dominatrix based out of New York City, and I would love if you could introduce yourself, Leora.
Hello, Mistress Blunt. It's an honor and a privilege to be here chatting with you. I'm so excited about this opportunity to kind of share more together and also learn more about your style. Um, I've been watching you for a long time. I find it so incredible to be in this space with you now, so thank you. My name is Mistress Leora. I am a Femdom, financial dominatrix, and overall sensual muse. I work mostly online, hoping to do more real time in the future, but now just enjoying exploring the online realm and seeing how far that power can take me.
It's so interesting because I feel like my experience has largely been in person until the pandemic, where I migrated to more online forms of work. And you kind of are having the opposite experience now, talking about having worked primarily online and playing with financial domination and Findom online, and expressing interest to move that into like a more physical real-time space. So I'm curious for you, what has it been like being an online financial dominatrix, and like what about exploring dynamics in real time appeal to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think how Findom online sort of started for me was, and I think this is the case for a lot of people probably, but just feeling very depleted in, sort of other aspects of my vanilla professional life and feeling like I really wanted to see if I could command more power, more income, more freedom and autonomy. And I really kind of wondered if that was possible in kind of leveraging my sensuality and my dominance alongside, any other skills that I would normally use in my vanilla civilian job. So I sort of started Femdom online as an experiment. I had sort of run into this little corner of the internet and been really impressed with different DOMs who I'd seen working completely in this online space and really, setting their boundaries and leveraging their work as they wanted, like really defining that for themselves and so many different individual styles as well. And so that was something that inspired me, and I thought, okay, I'll give this a try. And I also feel like I was drawn to the online space because it offers a way for many people who may feel like they want to experiment with exercising dominance or developing their own style and brand of domination or trying out, an aspect of sex work online in a way that is very private. It feels very safe. It feels like a kind of a secure environment to experiment, especially in the beginning, as opposed to, jumping right into real time without any experience or training under other dominatrices. So I feel like for me, that was really a good place to begin, and also allowed me to interact with a large volume of submissives in the early days. So just being able to really talk and connect with a lot of different submissives from all over the world, learning about their interests, their desires, what they hunger to experience. I think for me, that was extremely formative for my domination. If I had gone directly to meeting clients in person in my own, city. So I think that that was the orientation for me. And I think that I also see a lot of online, we see a lot of gatekeeping around what is real domination, is online domination real, and maybe some, yeah, gatekeeping around like what newer sex workers should or shouldn't do or can or can't do. And I really do feel that the online space has opened up, a new environment for so many people to kind of experiment with their sexuality, experiment with their domination, and kind of develop their own avenue for work, their avenue for their own freedom and goals, and in a way that is really safe. And I don't know, I'm very celebratory of any who wants to use this as a space to experiment, because I think that yeah, it's beautiful to see what people can create from that. So
And it's so interesting hearing you say like, is financial domination real domination? And I feel like we're like deeply embedded in sex worker Twitter, like, and especially in like financial domination Twitter. And there are so many conversations around like the role that money plays in both sex work and in like DS dynamics. And I was just having a conversation yesterday with one of my financial submissives, one of my fin subs, about how for us, financial domination is an expression of our DS dynamic. And in like a society that places so much value and gives so much power to money that it feels to me like a natural part of submission by giving control over those funds to your Dom. And while this might look different in a variety of different DS relationships, I feel like in like total power exchange dynamics, for me, having being able to control my submissive's finances to different extents really kind of just like makes that power exchange feel all the more tangible. And for me, so much of playing with DS is about sacrifice and surrender and really like suffering in like the religious sense of the word for a higher power, for your dom, for your mistress.
yes,
And yeah, and to me, suffering or surrendering and um, prioritizing the needs and desires and pleasures of your mistress over your own necessitates a financial sacrifice. And I always get annoyed on like on in these like deep sex worker Twitter spaces or just like kinky queer Twitter spaces about how if there is a financial exchange, um, it is not a personal submissive. I've like seen this
it suddenly
on
becomes like delegitimized through that.
right. Like a the relationship that I have with a client is less intimate than other types of relationships, or that money somehow erases the power dynamic. When for me, I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum where it's like if you want to play with power, like we're playing with money.
Yeah, I could not agree more with everything that you just said. I really feel, and I actually looked up a tweet that I had tweeted a long time ago because it really resonated with this discussion. I really feel like, as you've said, there are so many folks who will say, financial domination is not femdom, whereas I really feel as though financial domination is one of the purest forms of femdom, and it's a natural extension of a femdom. Like it cannot be detached from that when we live in the capitalist structure in which we are embedded. So my tweet said, financial sacrifice is the purest form of submission because only gifts of cash say, I want the best for you and I trust you to know what is best for yourself. I feel like so many
Hot.
clients, yeah, like so many clients like giving gifts, lingerie, like sex toys, like whatever other things that are kind of tinged with the interests of that client. Whereas a gift of cash is so pure. And like you said, it's the most sacrificial and painful thing that you can do is overextend yourself financially for your dominant. I really feel as though, especially, I mean, I do feel like that has currency, in regular full service sex work as well as in person DS. But I feel like in the online sphere, there is really nothing more important, just because of the kind of quality of that exchange, wherein there are so many, people in DOMs, in boxes at any given time, wanting attention, wanting kink, wanting to experience your unique sensuality and what you have to offer, and but presenting it as this situation where they are going to be serving you. But in the online space, without financial sacrifice, where is the servitude? Because what it amounts to is the client consuming the attention and the energy of the dominant, which is like a very, intense energy that we put forward. And we need to take something from that. Like, that ultimately needs to benefit us as the dominant. And if the submissive is truly in this orientation of serving, submitting, focusing on the dom's pleasure, I think that is so key. I really feel that financial exchange, it's just, yeah, it's so powerful, because in the moment, like even in real time, in the moment, you may be sacrificing your power by submitting yourself to corporal punishment from your mistress. You might be, reveling in that power exchange of really like allowing yourself to be physically overpowered. But only gifts of cash, especially over a long term, can actually change your dominant's life, offering them more security, more peace, more comfort, ability to invest in the future, in your home, in like all of these things that you would really want for someone you love and admire. And that's why I think it is so powerful and really just a natural component of femdom. And I feel like there's a lot of, as you said, around that reality, because there is no submission, true submission, without really wanting the best for your dom, in every way that you can put that forward.
100%. Financial security is hands down my love language. And I love how you phrase that. And it reminds me how you phrase the tweet that you referenced at the beginning of that money is a gift, where you're saying, I trust you to know what's best for you, and doesn't have to do with someone's like fantasy of what you want. And it reminds me of in Judaism, there's different types of like community service and tikkun olam, of different ways of giving. And one of the highest forms of this charity is giving anonymously, and
Yes.
and like without like strings attached to that donation. And I think about tikkun olam a lot when I'm thinking about financial domination, that like the ultimate act of submission and service is that like you don't need to be recognized for what you're doing, and that it enables whoever you're giving it to do whatever they want with it, which is also like in a community organizing perspective, like why I like am so involved in mutual aid organization, like, and why like I give folks that I see on the street cash, because like who am I to tell this person what they need? Like they clearly know themselves better than anyone and like I trust that they will do what they need to do with the cash. And I think that that is something that I really think a lot about, of like true submission being not necessarily for recognition, and in a way that recognizes and respects that we know what we're doing. And also what you're saying about security really being such a beautiful gift. When I think about submission and how individuals serve me, it's really important that I don't become reliant on that type of service or submission. So the types of service and submission that have always resonated the most with me have been ones that have empowered me to either like learn a skill or gain more financial security. So like for example, I have a submissive who works on my website, and like I also can work on my website, but I'd rather someone else pay me to do it. Um, but when I run into a problem, they film a tutorial for me. So whenever they're working on my website and doing something for me that I don't know how to do, they will record a personalized tutorial for me so
Mhm.
that I can then do that task even if they leave my service. And I think for me that's such an important part of submission, that whether or not this relation, and like any relationship, like
Yes.
whether or not whether or not this relationship continues, I want you to thrive and survive and be secure and have access to all of the things that you want and desire.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, I think that is so true. And that is the difference to me between submitting your physical body in a session and submitting, financially and with gifts of, tutorials or skill building, like you just mentioned, which I think is so cool. Like that shifts it from a momentary direct power exchange where the submissive is also benefiting from that interaction and gaining like a direct erotic experience from that interaction. It shifts it from that space to this long term benefit for the dominant. So I think that really engaging in that from the submissive side says, I want you to benefit from my submission, not today only, but like over weeks, months, years, like even long after they've left your service, long after that relationship. Like it really creates something that is so long term and honors the dominant's authority over such a long term, because it enables us as the dom to kind of create this life that we've dreamed of and imagined, and like just that freedom to be able to go and create and travel and be so comfortable and have the ability to like pursue any goals and projects that we're interested in. The submissive's financial sacrifice to me honors that in such a beautiful way. Not to mention that I think that power exchange in the moment is sexy as fuck. Just because it is so delicious. Like that is the real, and I think when, I don't have as much real time experience. I'm starting to develop that like a little more now, but in the online sphere, I think it's very hard to achieve that feeling of like true, tangible power exchange. And financial domination definitely achieves that in such a sexy way, I feel, for both the dominant and the submissive. And I think that it's truly such an erotic and powerful experience to really give up that level of tangible power and for me to receive it, like it's truly, and I think some folks might think that that's like not an intimate or sensual thing, but truly,
Try it
it's
once
so, so,
and report back.
yeah.
It's so interesting. I think this goes back a little bit to what we were talking about before of like how people see sex work and financial domination. But I think like on the reverse end of that, there's also the idea that paying for any type of sex work is a form of financial domination, which it definitely is not. Like paying someone for their labor, time, experience, and expertise is not a form of financial domination. I know I've like chatted with people on my OnlyFans about like I'm like, oh, like you need to tip if you want to chat with me. They're like, I'm not into Findom. I'm like, this has nothing to do with financial domination. Like, you're clearly a little bitch, but like, other than that,
Brutal, brutal situation.
yeah, you're just like paying for my time. And people are so uncomfortable with this concept of like seeing a sex worker or having a financial interaction in a relationship. But like also so many relationships, especially like heteronormative relationships, have this have money is a huge component of this relationship. People stay together because of like financial codependency or financial abuse and like all of these different ways that money mediates relationships, whether or not sex work or whether or not financial domination is involved. And to, I think, to like take that out of the wheelhouse when you're exploring power dynamics is such such a squandering of something that's really hot because it is like you're saying it's such a tangible and potent way to play with power, especially in distance relationships and even in real time. Like, so at one point during the pandemic, I had this guy that I was chatting to who was sending me a little bit of money for my attention, and he wound up like driving 4 hours to drop off a couple $1,000s to me and kiss each of my feet once, and then drove 4 hours back. And I'm like, I was so turned on after the event. Two of my friends were like in the other car just watching, which was really hot too.
So hot. Oh my God.
It
I would
was
have to
so
like
hot.
masturbate
Yeah,
afterwards.
I was like super turned on afterwards. I like spoiled the shit out of my friends and was just like so erotically charged from this connection. And I was also like, for me, like knowing that he was driving to see me was also very hot. But I can imagine what that did to him of like not being allowed to come or touch himself until he came to see me. And like that turned that 8 hour car ride and like 2 minute interaction with me into like an all day sexual experience for this person.
Yes. Ah, so hot. And like I bet it and it just like arouses you even harder.
Yeah, I'm like getting turned on just thinking about it because it's like that
Totally.
showed so much like sacrifice that he was willing to go his sacrifice his whole day in an effort to bring me pleasure. And I directed him how he could bring me pleasure. And it was just
And he wanted to do it for you.
right. Yes. And I think that that's something that's also I would like to talk about. Like for me, I'm interested in submission that worships me as an individual, less that worships me as like an embodiment of a dominatrix. Like I don't know if it's like
Yes.
holistic domination, but like for me it's very much I know we want to have like a conversation on like how female superiority, supremacy fits into these conversations and I'm super curious on your on your thoughts on this. And I think for me, I have a lot of queer clients and a lot of queer clients that I play with financial domination with. So it has gotten to be less of like
Mm,
that gender discrepancy.
mm.
And for me, I think I just realized like I'm fucking amazing. And like so few people are
Yes.
actually dominant and like I want to be like worshipped for who I am as a person, not per se just as this like embodiment of femininity, which is like a very hot and fun thing to play with as part of an
Yes.
individual submission to me.
Yes. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think actually that's probably why I think many of our philosophies kind of resonate, is because I completely relate to this desire of, I really enjoy playing with these kinks and fetishes and really like using, whether it's clothing or whether it's specific kinks to kind of trigger, you know, folks like fantasies but ultimately, I know of myself that I am a force of nature as a woman and as a broader, dominant. And so being worshipped holistically for every part of me that exists and every part of like however that manifests in my day-to-day life, whether or not I'm in, high heels or latex, that is key for me. And I think yeah, I think I I also, for me, it's really interesting how you say that it's become less gendered for you. I think that is so, so cool. And for me, I think it remains very gendered. I think it's definitely kind of like an extension of my politics or praxis, like in the way that I relate to men in the world. I do have women submissives. I've had a couple of NB submissives. The dynamic to me feels completely different. I don't know, like and I love those dynamics as well, but it's very much, it's less politicized for me in that sense, and it's way more of a kind of a nurturing, like mommy oriented interaction. Whereas with men, I just feel that it is kind of a righting of wrongs in a way. But I kind of made some notes on this as in the way that femdom kind of permeates beyond just like the, our little sex work Twitterverse sphere. I think it can really extend into our broader lives as well. And I know that I personally talk with like a lot of my girlfriends, a lot of other women that I know, because I know that I have this confidence and this way that I carry myself, which is rare for them and something that they, desire to emulate more. And so I think for me, in terms of like the use of not only both financial domination and just kind of like a femdom philosophy, like an orientation to life, I feel that it is subversive in and of itself because the default in our world is kind of putting men first. So I feel that putting yourself first in everything that you're doing is already very subversive to, the social order as it is. And also being very straightforward about that, I find naturally attracts people who also have that orientation. So beyond a focus on like specific femdom fetishes, I find that my energy and confidence as a dominant woman kind of really naturally rewards me in my day-to-day life through the way that I uphold boundaries. So, for example, not putting forth emotional labor for people who have not earned that, like really keeping a focus on putting myself and my pleasure first. And through, again, it attracts people, it attracts men, male submissives into my life with whom that energy resonates. So, because I do think that it's not taboo for everything to be structured around a man. That's the default. Like, that's how things have always been. And so I think that a lot of men submissives really want to break free from that and seek, a dominant leader for whom they can kind of reorient their focus. And so, yeah, I think just this act of like really centering yourself as a femme in this world is already so powerful. And I think that I love watching people of all genders kind of learn from that.
Yeah. I can't think of anything more humiliating than submitting to a man.
Literally.
Like I understand forced bi sessions only in that in that
Totally.
space. But I wonder if everyone who submits to men feels that way.
I just feel like, and I totally get like the desire as a dominant to like maybe experience submission. Um, but like, yeah, I feel like that's obviously feels safer at the hands of a woman. And I also just feel like submitting to a man, again, there's nothing taboo about it. There's nothing subversive. So how am I gonna get like turned on? Like, do you know? Like
It
it's
seems
just
like
not.
basically vanilla sex.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
it's not doing it for me.
yeah, I think there's something so interesting about that subversion of power dynamics that both like female supremacy plays as well as financial domination because you're subverting these like deeply patriarchal capitalistic notions that are so embedded into the structure of our society. And I think that there's so much that can be learned through that subversion. And I love how you talk about like the ways to take these practices like out of like the dungeon or out of like the bedroom and into your life and the ways that you kind of embed and embody your femdom praxis in your everyday life. And I think it's something that I talk a lot about, especially in like I have like a kinky yoga practice, like taking things off of the mat, off of the dungeon into the mat, into your everyday life. And there's so many lessons that can be learned. And I think kind of where our we've talked like while we weren't recording about some of the similarities and differences in our branding, and I think that we tend to have somewhat similar clientele and submissives who are like I'm sure there are some differences, but it seems to be that we both value and prioritize ongoing relationships in a space where we can kind of explore like what this relationship looks like and how it can transform your life and be embedded into every action that you do in service to your mistress rather than just like a one-off send. Like sure, hot, I'll take it, but but like I personally am so much more interested in how financial domination can um create a structure. Financial domination and Fandom can create a structure for an ongoing relationship that can transform someone's life in every aspect of their life, from their other personal relationships, from their relationship with their partner. I just got off of the phone with a submissive who I was training on how to be a better partner to his wife and how he can worship her in a way that she fucking deserves.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So sexy.
it's so sexy. Yeah, and like you should, this is just how my submissive should be treating everyone in their
Yes.
lives and like
Mm-hmm.
knowing when is the appropriate time to like embody your authority and when it is the appropriate time to kind of like step back and learn. And I think for cis men, there's so much space for improvement in that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that you touched on that were really resonant. Hmm.
I'm interested a little bit in like how you navigate and manage ongoing DS dynamics and kind of like what that looks like in your practice and in your relationships.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the reminder too. I was kind of stumbling. Um, yeah, I think just as you mentioned, like I do think that both of us are kind of oriented towards longer term DS dynamics. I find that that gives you more space to learn and grow. As a dominant, I find that that's really important just because I do feel like I am so nurtured as well by positive and fulfilling and healthy DS dynamics. And I find that sometimes in the online sphere, one thing that can happen is that if you are, if you price your interactions really, really highly, sometimes you can actually get out of practice. Like you can get out of the mode of engaging with submissives like on a really, really regular basis, like always talking to new subs, which can be good. Like sometimes you need to do that when you're like in a period of, a lot going on and stuff. But I find that for me, having those regular and kind of ever deepening DS dynamics is something that, informs my practice. It teaches me so much all the time. And it allows me to kind of exercise like new modes of dominance, new forms of control, new forms of kind of exchange of power and intimacy with me and my submissive. So I'm definitely I'm definitely oriented towards those dynamics. I also find that what is most rewarding for me about that is, just as you mentioned, being able to be a force for transformation in the life of the submissive and to really have this relationship sort of structure so much about the rest of their life in such a positive way, providing that kind of guidance and control and orientation that so many men are completely adrift without. So I think that that is something that's really important. And for me, being able to be paid to provide this training on how to truly embrace feminine supremacy, feminine leadership, that is so powerful for me because I do feel that women, femmes, are naturally more inclined towards being these figures of guidance, of leadership. I think that the state of this chaotic world that we live in demonstrates that men are not as well oriented towards that purpose. So I think for me, I have a really strong philosophy around this area, and to be able to share that with men who genuinely want to learn and grow and adapt their behavior and serve all women in their lives. It's supremely sexy to be able to engage in a relationship where that training is taking place and that I'm learning so much from them and they're learning from me. And that's just very, very powerful because it kind of feels like a microcosm of what I want to see in our world and like what is possible. Like if every woman, if every man, like if every DS connection could be so instructive and so transformative for like these gendered inequities that we see and economic inequities, I just feel like, wow, that would be so powerful.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about how it's like how relationships should be microcosms of the world that you want to see, and like embodying your politics in your personal relationships. I feel like it's something people talk a lot about, and it's very hard to do. Like I feel like we often aren't given the skill sets necessary to have the type of relationships that we want, with the depth that we want, with the like accountability that we want, and the ability to communicate repressed needs. And I think so much of the work that I do in my practice is working with folks to be better resourced to have the depth of relationships that they want. And yeah, and like embody your politics in your personal relationships as well. I love how you phrased that. Okay, I
Yeah,
have.
that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that really makes me think of like one thing that I also love about even online work is just how subversive it is to even, be charging for your DM, to be charging for your attention, for your interaction, for anything like that. I think that that's something that I've, read and learned a lot from legendary Bardo Smith, from another online dom, Yoshin Lourdes. There's a lot of folks who have written about this at length, but I really feel that so much of the labor that we provide as femmes that actually literally enables the world to continue turning day to day in terms of emotional labor, domestic labor, sexual labor, all of these, like the energy and sensuality that we put forward is everything. It is like the most valuable thing on earth, and yet all of that has been historically so undervalued, valued at no $0 for us. And so I think that in in my femdom practices, kind of putting boundaries on my attention, putting prices on my attention, it forces men who interact with me to value the labor from women that has kind of always been taken for granted. And kind of this expectation that you will perform sensuality for free, that you will provide attention, sexuality, emotional energy, care, tenderness, like all of these things that are so, 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 so valuable. So doing that teaching that this is valuable and that it has to be remunerated in that way, for me is so important because I find that it is what enables my relationships to be sustainable. And then that relationship can continue forever because it's really fulfilling me.
That's so well put. And yeah, I love how the work that you mentioned kind of builds on the work of Sylvia Federici's Wages for Housework and some of her earlier work about compensating women for uncompensated labor, and how so much of capitalism is able to exist because of the unpaid labor of marginalized community and women. Um, and I was also, it made me think of the book, I don't know if you've read it, Full Surrogacy Now, which came out last year about abolishing the family and the nuclear family. And it's just like a truly phenomenal book. And I feel like all of those texts and those two books that I mentioned are, as well as Caliban and the Witch, more Sylvia Federici, about like how women having access to capital has been penalized throughout history, and how capitalism is dependent on women not having that access to capital. And I think what I like so much about Findom is how this practice subverts the like capitalist patriarchal history of not paying women for their labor and truly understanding, like putting your money where your mouth is when you understand that, when you say that emotional labor, when you say that sex work is work, and that when you know what it takes to make a safe environment for
Mm-hmm.
someone and give someone that security and hold the space to have the type of relationship that you want. As I've kind of like gone on in my career, I know you mentioned like when you charge more, you interact with less people. It's something that I've been experiencing recently when I doubled my rate in the pandemic and have no desire to bring it back down. And I definitely work a lot less and sometimes miss having more kinky encounters. But what I've done is carved out the space for myself to have the depth of intimacy that I want. And I sat down and I really thought about it. Like, what am I bringing? How many years of expertise and experience? And what kind of sessions do I want to have? And what I really most enjoy the ongoing dynamics that I've been able to cultivate and build with my submissives, where we do some sort of like ritual transformation scene, which takes so much energy of me to facilitate that in thinking about it, in planning it, and in the time that I need to come down from that, that it's really like
Yes.
a 3 day practice for
Right.
me, minimum of when I'm like doing a transformative scene with a submissive that I have an ongoing dynamic with. And so I just realized that I like significantly needed to up my rate because I wanted to be working significantly less so that I could focus on bringing all of my attention in and energy to those spaces. Because what I've found that through working with submissives, so much of, for me in my practice is about attunement and the subtle ways of attuning to a submissive, where it almost feels like you're reading their mind and kind of like guiding the session where they no longer have to think and you are doing all the thinking for them. And I fall into this really deep top space where I'm like very turned on, very attuned, and able to kind of like repattern different types of attunements for folks when like at its best. And that is what I want to be holding space for, is those type of transformative dynamics.
That is so, so powerful, and it sounds so sexy.
It
um,
is, and like
yeah.
how rare of a thing to have that type of attention from someone. So fucking hold space for
Yes.
it with cash.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's also something that I've learned from engaging in this work for almost 3 years, or over 3 years, is I know now the value of that. I know that there is a value for texting, a value for photos, a value for just that incomparable energy that you're putting forward, that capacity to hold space and to be co-creating or facilitating this environment where these yeah, really trans place, like that is so, so, so powerful, and it's so valuable to people. Clearly, we have this like multi-million dollar industry and in all of its different forms, that it's exercised in, but realizing that, and also you can be like a single longer scene, but it can turn into like a 3 day or more energetic expense from you in the process. So just kind of being aware of that and understanding the energy that you're putting forward, you need that to be sustainable. You need that to, like, for you to be able to continue doing that work that you love. It needs to be rewarding you and keeping you safe, fed, housed, all of that. And so, yeah, I think just gaining that greater awareness of these gifts and how they are valued, I think that that's so enables us to kind of structure our work in a way that is like most fulfilling. So it's really cool to hear that from you.
Totally.
It kind of made me think of a question like, kinks evolved through this? You've been doing it for a long time. And I'm sure there's been a lot of, like you said, that you're kind of leaning more into these ritual transformations lately. Like, how has that kind of changed for you?
Yeah, I think when I I started doming when I was 18 and I'm 32 right now. So I think if my math is right, 14-ish years. Um,
Unreal.
I have no idea how to do math. But like for a long time, like almost half my life now, I guess. Wow, I didn't realize that. But I like came into leather spaces and like an old guard leather training space where I trained as a submissive and earned my leathers and learned how to dom on like the other side of a whip, which was like very fun for me. I was like a horny young 18-year-old who was like, I want to try everything. I want to like
Totally.
know everything. And it was definitely like a problematic space that I trained in. There was an older man who ran the space, and I like to say that so much about what I learned about power dynamics was through the abuse of them and the misuse of power, which I think is a very powerful teaching tool. So like on top of like hard skills that I learned and many beautiful, wonderful experiences and relationships that I was able to cultivate in that space, it also taught me a lot about what I hope to never replicate in my relationships. But I think when I started pro doming when I moved to the city, it was much more focused on what my submissives wanted and was much more of like um, providing and catering towards someone else's fantasies. And I think over the years, I've definitely like tried on different styles of domination based on what I was interested in exploring or learning more about. But really, I think I've like very much come into myself as a dominant and what I want and prioritizing my interests. And over the I probably last few years, handful of years, like 5 or 6 years, I've been focusing much more on psychological domination, and which has always been at the core of it for me, that I've been interested in DS dynamics and that BDSM toys, tools, implements, wardrobe, fetish attire have always been paths into someone's psyche.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the way like and it was so hard for me to find language for kink because it was very much a specific dynamic that I would look at in a sexual experience when I was watching porn. It wasn't like a heavy BDSM scene in a dungeon space. And so it is so much about what that dynamic is. And so whether someone is interested in whips and bondage and all of these different things, I like to know that because I like to exert minimum energy for maximum output. So if someone has something that works for them, I want
Yeah.
to exploit that. Like if someone knows how to get into their brain, I want them to give me that information so that I can like mold them into whatever I want them to be for me, however I want them to serve me, however I want them to surrender or to submit. And so much of my play has kind of like dialed back on the heavy like BDSM structure of like when you think of like dominatrix, like I'll often dom in yoga pants. I'm like, if you can't worship me and revere me in what I'm comfortable wearing, like
Yeah.
what are we doing here? And so it really is much more focused on ongoing DS dynamics where I am kind of carving out space in someone's brain to have service to me be at the forefront of every action that they take so that every breath is for mistress, every dollar they earn is for mistress, every time they get aroused that is for mistress. And if those actions aren't in service to me, then we have some work to do. So my scenes can look very different. And from that space, I will often do ritual transformation scenes based on something that the submissive is working through or going through and bringing in elements of what their like fetishes or
Yeah.
kinks are for very like, um, they're kind of like ritual death scenes. So like whatever needs to be killed, we're killing it and we're transforming it into something else that is in service to mistress.
I love that. Yeah, I totally relate. And I think that that is also, as someone who came into this scene without like a real, like, I wasn't well versed in specific kinks or fetishes, but I've always been drawn to kind of psychological power exchange and kind of that sensual power dynamic. And so I really like what you've said about kind of leveraging the submissives kinks or like their specific triggers, using those as tools to get to where you want to go, where you want to take them. And I find that I'm exactly the same way. Like for me, it's really about curating this space where the submissive is in ever deeper space of surrender and obsession and worship and devotion, and like taking up more and more and more of the space in their brain until, yeah, there's nothing else and there's only that single-minded focus on whether that, and that may occur only in a session, but also like if that's repeated, that will kind of gradually become a part of their life. And so, yeah, that's something that I really, really resonate with, is kind of using different specific, kinks or triggers as a means to my end, which is, ever increasing, tangible power exchange. So sexy.
So sexy. I know. I was like getting a little flustered and turned on in this conversation. But and so something in there that you said made me think of like there's definitely like the home wrecker, fuck you into debt type style of financial domination, which like I can get down with. Hot, cool. You want to like fuck up your life, great. But I think for me, so much of my interactions are like nurturing sustainability. And what I find, I feel like people have a misconception that all Findom is the like home
Ruin
wrecker,
you.
ruin you type style of
Yeah.
domination. And yeah, I guess I'm interested if you wanted to talk a little bit about like the different types of fin subs that you have. If like I'm curious if you see any difference between like people who identify between pay pigs, fin subs, or human ATMs, or just like a little bit about the different ways of sustainability or not.
No, it's a really interesting question. And I think this speaks to actually, yeah, like a lot of evolution in my brand, I would say. Folks who have followed me since the beginning will probably remember that I feel I started out on a far more soft dom, like far more nurturing type of front, because I saw a lot of, with the clients and subs that I was interacting with, I just saw a lot of, you know, insecurity about submission. And I think that, and I've said before, I feel that the range of permissible expression of masculinity in our societies is like that big, like so narrow, and that most men's like sexuality and desires like fall outside of that range. And so that's really problematic because they deserve a space to be able to explore submission safely. And so that was really where I started, quite a bit, like a very kind of nurturing style, and attracted, a lot of long-term submissives. I have subs who met me in my first, 3 months of online Findom who still serve me today, so which is an incredible thing. That being said, that level of emotional labor and nurturing and tenderness is dangerous to put forward to folks who do not necessarily value that or take care of it, if you know what I mean. And so for me, I realized that by extending that as kind of my natural baseline brand, offering that aspect of myself to anyone and everyone who came into my messages to submit, was not sustainable for me and was really leading to, a burnout, not feeling valued, not it was not fulfilling me in the way that I needed. And so I find that I have really, my style has evolved quite a bit, and I do cater a lot to these Findom relapsers, or however you'd like to call it, folks who really like to come. They like to get so psychosexually fucked up, spend hundreds or thousands in, an hour or a day, and then like really reach this like pinnacle of psychosexual fuckery and like go so deep into subspace and just binge hard and go crazy. And then their way of doing that is going really aggressively like that and then taking a break, whether the break is for a month, 2, 3 months, something like that before doing that again. So I do find that I attract a lot of those submissives just because I really love to play with language. I love to kind of construct like a scene. I find that I'm very much in the mental and psychological space, which is definitely most of my subs are attracted to that. So I do enjoy that like ruination kind of kink. I think it's a whole other discussion on like, what are our responsibilities as, a femdom in order, like in terms of making sure that someone is playing like in a sustainable and safe way. Just because I do feel that women are already burdened with a lot of that labor. I don't know, it's kind of like this weird standard that is applied to sex workers that we don't apply to, casino workers or like bar owners or, other places where people might spend irresponsibly. But so, yeah, I do attract a lot of those type of subs that are kind of, they come by and spend a lot and it's like an extremely sexy time and then they're not there for a while, but they'll usually come back, just according to their cycle and their rhythm. But I do have to say that most of my longest term subs are folks who I share a much more sensual relationship with, which is like very intimate, very oriented towards worship. I think that that tenderness and nurturing is very natural for me, but I now will only kind of put that forward with far more trusted submissives. So, yeah, so I think I like the space that we have in our practice to be able to engage with subs who are looking for all types of things, and some people want and have the capacity to have like a longer term, more sustainable relationship. Some people just want like a really intense sexual experience. That's very sexy too. So I think that I like being able to host space for, yeah, those diverse things. And it's so unique as to me and, the person who I'm interacting with. So,
Yeah, I feel like it's so true for so many DS dynamics is that like every relationship, every DS dynamic looks differently. And like it sounds like in these dynamics where you're talking about like it's edge play. It's like you're pushing someone
yes.
right to the edge of what they want. And it's in physical play that's like also my favorite of like being able to like get so thoroughly embedded in someone's like psychosexual narrative that they are pushing
Yes.
themselves further and further. It's like while they're edging, it's like financial edging while they're edging until they like just explode. And like when you're talking about the personal responsibility of the dom, like I totally agree with you that there is this like moralization that's put on sex workers that is not in other industries. And also, it sounds like you're giving them exactly what they fucking need. like, like
Exactly.
what is wrong with giving someone exactly what they want? And I would also say like I don't think that BDSM is safe. I don't think like being vulnerable is particularly safe. Like I don't think sharing how you feel is like we have this notion of what is and is not safe. And I think when you are exploring intimate things that may be repressed or that you have stigma or shame about, or that like if you're doing like corporal things that actually could be dangerous, like I think we have to accept a certain amount of risk as well as like prepare ourselves and submissives for conversations of like how to navigate conflict when things do go too far. Um, and like I think that's saved for the ongoing relationships. I like how you talked about learning your boundaries through your practice as a financial dominatrix and doing online domination. Because I think that's so true. We so often learn about our boundaries when we kind of like push up against them and go too far.
Yeah, and really learning about just kind of the emotional, like the energy expenditure of this work is so real. Being in that kind of top space and really facilitating this scene and creating this environment. Like you are really the leader of that interaction, and it's a lot. It's heavy, it's intense, and so for folks who have been with me for a really long time, who I know can be counted on to obey and to do as I say, I'm in a much kind of safer space with them. I feel like it can be a lot more exploratory, a lot more kind of ongoing, free flowing, kind of evolving as a dynamic, but like there's a lot more kind of trust there. Whereas with submissives who are new to me, it's more of I'm evaluating them in terms of their aptitude to serve me, to obey me, to trust my guidance and leadership, to really surrender their focus on their own ego and themselves, and to be about me. And so, yeah, I think you kind of feel out different folks' capacity for submission as you engage with them, and you do have to protect your own energy in the same vein. But yeah, I do, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of, and I've talked with other people about this. Like, I think there's a lot of stigma maybe against Findoms who do these really intense drains. Taking a lot of money from someone in a short period. Uh, because of, oh my goodness, like what is that going to do? Like, should they be spending that money on their kids? Should they be spending that money on their wife? Like these kind of questions. And I think you're totally right in that, like, sex workers are really questioned with that morality more than a lot of other business owners are. And I do think that that's kind of reflective of just these expectations that we have around women to be, such tender caretakers in every environment. Whereas in reality, here we are providing a supremely luxurious, kinky service. And yeah, folks who come to me and want to experience that, that's what I'm here for. And I love that from them. And I had an experience once actually with one submissive. He is such a little bitch. Um, so this is a sub who likes to kind of binge and then take breaks. And he was responsible for bringing me to my highest earning day, which once was like a 10K day. Absolutely amazing. But this was really because he was like going crazy totally on this bender of spending. But I remember in one of my earlier interactions with him, he was really, spending so much, like these huge tributes. And we were on Night Flirt at the time. And he was, and we're in this dynamic. And I was actually kind of thinking, like, is this okay? Is this safe for him? Is he in a good space? Like, because sometimes submissives will give you clues that, maybe mentally they're not in the right space to be engaging in this. Maybe they need a break. Maybe they need a different time. But I do recall this, and this was so instructive for me, because he gave me his Night Flirt login info. And so I went in there, and this is in a space he's spending so much on me. He's actually making concurrent tributes to other DOMs. I
That's
was like,
hilarious.
what the fuck? Anyway, so it was just hilarious because here I was really worrying. But the reality that I've kind of learned from these kind of situations is that when someone is in that moment, they need to spend super deeply to achieve that level of subspace and eroticism that they're really seeking out. And if it's not going to be you, it's going to be someone else because they are there to spend. Like, that is the kink. Like, that is so sexy.
Right. And
And
it's also
so,
it's kink shaming, I think. Like,
totally, totally. Like, if you want to go out and blow your Christmas bonus on me, honestly, I feel like it's very responsible spending, if we're being honest. Like,
yeah,
I
people
think that
go into
there's
debt
way
for
worse ways
vacations.
to indulge. Exactly. Like,
And
I
like
think this is actually really healthy.
Findom is healthy.
Totally.
Uh,
It's
I,
self-care.
it is self-care, and it's also I don't actually believe in sexual addiction. And so I kind of have a hard time, like, I don't quite know what the word, but like pathologizing like people who are into that fetish because
Mm-hmm.
like to me it seems like they very clearly know what they want and it's up to them to figure out like what is sustainable and like what kind of impact it has on their life and also that we are not trained mental health professionals
No.
who are responsible for the care of them as one would in a therapy patient dyad. And I think putting that type of responsibility onto sex workers is so horphobic.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think that these, especially like very long term fin subs, they know what they're looking for. They know how to exercise their kink, what they're seeking, the feelings they want to feel engendered. Like, and I am not, yeah, I'm not one to turn somebody away. I think that this is just like, if that's what they seek, I'm honored that my dominance and my like psychological domination resonates with them, and I love that they choose me to kind of come into that space with again and again, whether it's every month, every like 5 months, whatever it is, and to really go deep together because it also is incredibly sexy for me because it's kind of like a shorter term interaction, but we're able to go so deep into such intensity. And I actually find that it is sustainable in a way too, in that way, because it's like very intense, but it's not intense over like a prolonged period. So it's kind of like a gift to us both. We really get in there and go so deep and so hard. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's supremely sexy, and I think everyone has their interests. Everyone has their things that they spend money on, and I think frankly that spending on your Findom, I think it's super sexy. It's super powerful, transformative.
It's so powerful. And there is something about like that deep. First of all, I want to say, like, when you logging into this person's night flirt to send yourself money and you see that he's simultaneously sending other people money is A, hilarious, and B, also makes you realize that, like, what is a lot of money for one person is nothing to other people. And that's something that sex work has definitely taught
Mm-hmm.
me. And
So true.
and so like maybe he didn't even feel that. And so when I tell people to like tribute to me, it's often not with like a numerical value, but I'm like, I want you to feel this. Like I want you to feel emotionally what it is like to send a tribute. And that number will be different for everyone. And like that is the starting point. Is like, what do you feel? Where does it bring you? And what does it bring to me? And when I think of like these like deep drains, it's just it like is like a very intense corporal scene. I think some people want like the longer term DS dynamic, and some people just want to be like a human fucking ATM who's like used and abused and like left in the fucking
Yes.
trash once their worth has been extracted and they are no longer of use to you. And like,
So fucking hot.
right. And
Ah.
like that's it's and like hearing you talk about it and like from my experiences doing the same, it is this like very erotically charged sexual dynamic that of like this psychosomatic, not psychosomatic, this like sexual somatic. It is somatic, but like this banter between like their wallet and my pussy and just like going it's like this like thorough pounding going
Yes.
back and forth and like this building towards like a plateau of release when they just like can't do anymore and run away.
I'm literally like wet.
I know I'm gonna go.
No,
I'm
but
gonna have something to cross off to my to-do list after this conversation.
exactly, exactly. But no, but you have completely, the way you described it, it is so like that for me. It's like this deep, intimate interaction between me and this submissive. And what is like hot about it, and mine is like, that's not them as a man, but it's as for me to consume and for me to fuck and push into and penetrate and just use and abuse and throw away. And like that is what is hot about it. And I think it's so true that it's like a very, very corporal experience for the sub because they're actually transcending out of their own body and really just becoming like this psychosexual object for me to like completely take over and like fuck into oblivion.
Yeah.
And it's just so, and it's so hot. And that's what they seek, because if they didn't, they wouldn't come back
Yeah.
to experience it, you know? So I think that that is so sexy for us both, and I love it.
It's so interesting because I feel like hearing what you just said about like just like this like method of like sexual extraction really reminded me of the conversation we were having about like how Findom so perfectly and elegantly and like eloquently subverts like capitalist patriarchal norms where men are just extracting and like pulling out emotional labor, and I'm like mimicking like the clown pulling something out of its mouth forever and ever, like this like
Yeah.
endless stream of emotional labor, this endless stream of unpaid, invisibilized, feminized labor. Like that is the norm in heterosexual relationships. That is like the norm in like that the woman is there to like serve and like please the man sexually. And this conversation that we're having about this type of like intense like pay pig draining session or like ruination where someone like it ends in them like running away
Literally
is
deleting themselves off the face of the earth.
yeah, how many accounts have you been through, sweetie? But like it really beautifully mirrors the how they're doing this type of extraction for feminized labor and other types of dynamics. And I think that there's something so cathartic and beautiful to be able to objectify someone
Yes.
in that way, where you are extracting the only thing that you want, the only thing that they can bring you, the only way that they can bring you pleasure in this way that is like highly like arousing, not just on a sexual level, but like on a psychological level of with each transaction, they are shown further and further their space and like lowered and lowered and lowered until they're like pulverized into like a little grain of dust that has to like go spray water on itself to like regrow and come back.
Yes. It's exactly that. And I really feel that the reason that we get these like super, you know, high spenders or these like intense fin subs who really want to go deeply into that space is because in the rest of the world, feminized labor caters to them, you know, and in every other way, you know, women are kind of in this role of submitting, taking care of all this domestic, emotional, sexual labor. Like that is the norm. And so I feel like I know, because of, you know, my work and because of the way that clients relate to me, that when I am able to subvert that dynamic and say, I want to treat you like the world, you know, treats a woman. Like I'm going to objectify you. I'm going to sexualize you. Like I'm going to use you as an object for my own like pleasurable consumption. And to be able to say that and have that resonate with some men because it is so subversive, because it is so taboo, that's what makes it sexy for both of us. And then we can really go there, and it's so fucking hot. And I just, like, for me, that is just the power, the bodily experience for us both is unreal.
Sold. Findom, it's
Love it.
in.
It's in. It's in.
Um, well, this has been truly an amazing conversation. I've been wanting to chat with you about Findom for a while, so thank you so much for chatting with me. But I'm wondering, are there any other questions or things you want to chat about to wrap up the conversation?
Whew, I'm heated up. Um, not in particular. I think this has been so, um, such an incredible conversation, illuminating for me, and I truly feel, um, so happy and pleased that some of the work that I've been doing in this space just over the past 3 years, is able to resonate with some of your work as someone who has been working as a dominatrix for however many years. um, I think it's truly incredible to me. It makes me feel like I'm kind of listening to my intuition and doing something that feels right. And that's so, so powerful. So I really, really, really appreciate you inviting me and just sharing some of your Findom and Femdom philosophy. It's such a privilege. And yeah, I'm really excited about, you know, to witness your continued like evolution and growth and to see where this will take us both.
Yes, and also if you're up for it, I would love to have another conversation about the evolution of our femdom philosophies because I feel like
I would
there's
love it.
so much there. But
There's so much there. I would love that.
yeah, sex worker Twitter, Findom Twitter is such a beautiful space, and you are such a little beacon of light and seductive and sensual power that is just a delight to witness.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for existing in this space and being such a legendary inspiration for us all. And I really appreciate how you're able to leverage your both like a dominatrix persona that is like focused around, you know, these diverse fetishes, but also how you embody, you know, this dominant femme supremacy in every aspect of your life and both online and offline and within kind of the femdom space and, you know, across so many spheres. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much of that with me.
Amazing. And if folks want to find you and crawl into your web, where can they do so?
Well, I am most active, unfortunately, on twitter.com slash Mistress Leora, but I'm also most active these days on loyal.com slash Mistress Leora, as well as onlyfans.com slash Mistress Leora. I would love to toy with more of you.
Amazing. And as always, you can find me at Mistress Blunt on Twitter and Instagram as long as they don't delete my accounts and
Thoughts and prayers.
mistressblunt.com and onlyfans.com slash Mistress Blunt. So wonderful. It was a pleasure to chat with you. Okay.